it for the last 2 weeks. I don't believe the police are being even-handed. And the Daily Telegraph have done a snap poll on this, asking the simple question, should Suella Braverman be sacked after accusing the police of playing favourites with protesters? And the result is pretty clear. Yes, she should be sacked, say 28%. No, she should not be sacked, say 72%. And I am absolutely certain that the centre of gravity on this, in this country is actually right behind the Home Secretary. Now, there are rumours swirling tonight around the bars and pubs in Westminster that a rapid reshuffle is on the way and that maybe Suella Braverman is on the way out. I like very much what Suella Braverman has to say. My disappointment is she never actually delivers any of it. But please, I'd love your view. Is Suella right? Farage@gbnews.com. Now, joining me to talk about this extraordinary article in the Times and whether it had authorisation from Number 10 and just how much mess and trouble this government may be in is David Maddox, political editor of The Express Online. David, good evening. Welcome back to the show. Tell us, how did this all happen? Was the article approved by Number 10, not approved by Number 10? How much trouble do you think she might be in?
So, hi again, Nigel. It's always a joy to be on the show. I have to say that my belief is that the Prime Minister himself saw it. Whether the officials who feel that they need to approve these things got to see it is another question. It seems that they didn't, and it appears that some edits that they asked for were ignored by by Suella's office or by the Home Office. So, there is potential that she could be in trouble. My feeling is that had he going to sack her over it, he'd have sacked her this morning when the full steam was up. So we'll see. It may be a reshuffle next week, but after talking to a few people, I've just filed a piece which suggests that that could be the end of Sunak himself if he tries to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that Sunak would sack her this morning would mean that there was a smack of firm leadership and decisive leadership. So that was always going to be pretty unlikely, David. In my view, things just don't seem to work like that under the Sunak premiership, or indeed, actually, many of the premierships the Tories have had over the last 13 years. But what interests me, I mean, you are a veteran of the Express newspaper group. You know where the centre of gravity is with your online and print readers. I would have thought most Express people would be rather like that Telegraph poll and would say, actually, she's right to say these things.
Well, I think we're running our own poll, which is even bigger in its gap from what I last saw. I mean, Suella, as far as Express readers, I think you're right, as far as most of the country speaks the truth on these matters and says what most people are thinking. She speaks from the heart. I think she genuinely believes these things too. She's got a very good instinct for the common man, if you like, which seems to be devoid on most of the rest of the Tory benches and the Labour benches, for that matter. So, but there's more to it than this, isn't there? Because, we know that the Sunak leadership's coming to an end, whether it's before or after an election, probably after. This is her pitch. This is her saying this is where the leadership battle is going to be fought. Her squaring off the right of the party and hoping enough to get her over the line. Yeah,
the right of the parliamentary party, but actually the centre ground of public opinion outside of the confines of Westminster. David Maddox, as ever, thank you for joining me on the programme. I wonder whether she actually wants to get sacked. That she might be able to say after they lose the next election, of course, I was forced out for standing up and saying what most Conservative voters genuinely believe. Who knows? Joining me is Brendan Clark-Smith, Conservative Member of Parliament for Bassett Law. Brendan, it has been, I put it to you, a pretty dismal week for the government. A King's speech that was a complete dud. And now a Home Secretary and Number 10 just not communicating or working with each other.
I think so much is being overblown as well at the moment, Nigel. And having read that Times article, and really, I think the Home Secretary just stated the obvious, really. And we've seen all of these things going on, as you've mentioned. BLM, Yvette Cooper's there with the faux outrage already, yet she was very critical of operational things with the police, with the Sarah Everard vigil, of course. And if there was trouble that on Armistice Day or on Remembrance Sunday, I'm pretty sure they'd be jumping up in the Commons first thing with an urgent question, expecting the Home Secretary or the government to be held to account with that. So for the Home Secretary to actually come out and say, I actually want to have a police force that's accountable, we respect them, they do a great job, but at the same time, there's certain expectations that we have. So she's just doing her job there. There'll be people who don't like her language that she uses. Now, I don't have a problem with that language. It's the language I use. It's the language my constituents use. And most of the country, I think, agree with her on this. So I think there's a little more at play here, really, than is actually meets the eye.
Yeah, I mean, Brendan, look, I'm sure if you took me around Bassett Law, tomorrow morning, and we met ordinary folk going about their business, I'm absolutely certain that the vast majority would say, yeah, she's absolutely right. The police are actually being biased in terms of the way they're handling all of this. But the problem is the Conservative Party and many, many of your colleagues with whom you sit on those green benches actually are centrists, actually are social democrats, really aren't concerned about immigration numbers, aren't bothered about any of these things, and are themselves politically correct members of the establishment. Her problem isn't you, the people in Bassett Law. Her problem is your party.
I mean, in terms of bias, I'm not so sure it's police bias as it's a fairness issue, and people will see things that are getting banned with things that aren't because they're a bigger group or they're more violent and so on, and people don't find that fair. Now, in terms of convincing colleagues and other parliamentarians and so on, as you know, Nigel, we're a very broad church at times, and it's shifting that centre of gravity. And of course, party members don't always have the same views as those of us in Westminster. Now, I always think I've got a responsibility to my constituents, but party members as well, to make sure that we have that discussion and we're robust about it and we're doing what it says on the tin. And really, we want to celebrate what's great about this country. We want to pay our respects at Armistice Day, on Remembrance Sunday, without these yobs going through with, I would say they are hate marches. And some people don't like that terminology. Some people may have a problem with that. But then what I'd also say is, if you're going to turn up at one of these marches and you've got people with socialist worker placards and things supporting Hamas and making comments about Israel or Jewish people and so on, and there are some good people going to those marches, but if you lie with dogs, you get fleas, and you're going to be associated with the people you march with. And if you don't like that, my suggestion is protest in a more constructive way. And I've been saying the same thing to colleagues.
Well, no, I fully understand that. But again, we've had indecisiveness from the Met, almost nothing from the Mayor of London, and the government, frankly, not saying very much. Brendan Clark-Smith, we talked there about the centre of gravity of your party, and you said it's a broad church. But I put it to you, you're a broad church with no faith. What actually is the Conservative Party? I mean, at the end of this week, just give me one thing that the Conservative Party stands for that all wings of the parliamentary party believe in. And don't say beating Labour.
OK, well, I joined the party because I believe in choice, and choice is the word I always used. And I think giving that choice to people, making sure that they are in control of their own lives, is something that generally I think most people on those benches would agree with. Now, we had different views on Brexit. We may have different views on various other things, but that's something that I hope that we can all agree on. And I'd say a Labour government restricts that choice. They want more power for the state. They want more power over people's lives. And we've got to convince people that actually we're going to improve people's lives. Now, next week, of course, we're going to have the Rwanda ruling that's going to be coming here. So I think there's a little bit of a panic about that as well. So I think that may also have something to do with the media for all today. But again, people will talk about the ministerial code with Suella Braverman and that she should be fired for X, Y, Z. She's not disagreed on any policy, of course, whereas Labour Party, one of their front benches gone over their ceasefire policy. They've got more than a dozen or so are completely insubordinate. And I think they want to divert from that, Nigel.
Brendan Clark-Smith, as ever, thank you for joining me on the programme. Well, Brendan there doing his best, but even on that issue of freedom, all we've seen is 13 years of government getting bigger under the Conservatives. Next, we discuss the poppy problem. Fewer people out selling poppies, some intimidated, and even fewer of us actually wearing them. What has gone wrong?
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We have a poppy problem, and we've shown over the course of the last week poppy sellers on Charing Cross Station surrounded by the pro-Palestinian, well, I'm going to say mob. Actually, in that case, they were fairly peaceful. But up in Waverley, the station in Edinburgh, the poppy seller there, the 78-year-old parachute regiment veteran who was there, actually was punched and attacked. We're getting today a story of a lady in Northern Ireland selling poppies who has been attacked. And my colleagues here at GB News have noticed, travelling through mainline stations, for example, places such as Liverpool Street, they've seen nobody on the station collecting and selling poppies. And here is an astonishing statistic published by YouGov. Have you worn a poppy so far this year? And 37% say I have. And an incredible 60% say I have not. And I'm stunned by that figure. Well, I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Mickey Harris, black cab driver and fundraiser. And Mickey, you've helped the Royal British Legion. You've taken veterans back to Normandy. You're very, very engaged with all of this. Something has changed, doesn't it?
Yes, I think it has. I think that it's the demographics of society, really, and it's the distances going backwards through the wars. I mean, coming back to the things that you were mentioning at the beginning of your introduction there, where you see people being probably rounded on a little bit by the pro-Palestinian groups at the moment. That's kind of separate to what I want to talk about a little bit, but I think that the war, First World War, the Second World War, and most of our veterans now, they're 98 years old, because the war was 80 years ago. And the wars that we see them, I mean, our grandfathers fought in the wars. My father fought for national service. I was fortunate enough, there's been no conscription for my age. And my children haven't fought, and my grandchildren haven't fought.
So it's moving beyond, although we have had Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yes, but it affects less people, whereas before it affected the whole nation. So I'm just thinking of the plethora of poppy sellers, people that are going out to carry these things.
So you sell these, what, from your taxi, do you?
I go out on Remembrance Sunday as well. I do the poppy cabs, and we pick the veterans up and we take them to their muster point.
Which is wonderful.
Yes, and then we sell these as well. And I have them in the taxi to sell to members of the public as well. And if I go to the local supermarket, usually there's a table in there. And again, it's a matter of what area that you actually go to and how many people have been affected by wars in general. And it is, thankfully, getting less and less.
Yeah, I suppose even with Iraq and Afghanistan, the sheer numbers are minute compared with World War II.
I mean, it's still devastating. If one person loses a loved one to a war or a conflict, and all wars and conflicts are terrible, really. It's a failure of politics, really, isn't it, a war? And we need to stop as many wars as we can, really. And again, but back to the poppies.
Yeah. So, and the other aspect, of course, is, you know, we've all grown up with poppy sellers.
Yeah. In the past.
How much change, folks, you
and today.
How much change do you folks at home now carry in your pockets?
Very little.
Very little.
I'm finding that we are fast becoming a cashless society, and this is becoming this. And the Royal British Legion, for example, have started to do this, and they've come out with cashless cards, so people can actually do cashless donations, just touch their card and go, which people are still willing to do, but it takes a slightly longer process.
It takes longer, whereas I remember commuting into the City of London, coming out of Cannon Street.
That's it.
And bosh, you put a quid in, a couple of quid in.
because you've got to change from your ticket that you purchased.
And you're almost still walking.
Yeah, and it's also nice, and you see the soldiers. They usually get someone nicely dressed in red from the Chelsea pensioner, and they are an attraction, and they will encourage people to purchase.
So we're basically. We're carrying less cash, which makes this difficult. It's great that the RBL have moved to this.
Well, they have to. You have to move on, or you'll just get.
But it's more cumbersome, and there's a queue, or whatever it is. But there are fewer poppy sellers out there.
Well, there are because there are fewer people that are affected by it.
And are willing to do it.
Well, yes, and well, I don't know, willing to do it. I suppose people will if you ask them to do it. But why would they do it on such a every day for 2 weeks?
We had a situation where the British Legion in Brighton was struggling to get volunteers to. So we sent one of our presenters, Patrick Christie's, down, and he stood in the street and did it. And we did raise a bit of money, a good bit of money.
Yeah, because people will donate if you can get people out on the streets. And that's the thing, again, is finding the people that have the time and the inclination to do it.
There may be fewer who have been directly affected through mum and dad by war. I completely buy that point. You know, and actually...
I think where you're going there is education, isn't it?
But if you're 22 years old, 80 years ago, it seems like we thought about Napoleon when we grew up. You know, but not quite, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, we're there, Attila the Hun.
But we do have, you know, on the school curriculum...
Yes.
People are taught about the rise of Hitler, etc.
Still in the curriculum, yes.
So...
I'm not so sure whether the Poppy Day is covered, and I think it's also a media coverage by us as well, in general. Now, this time of year, we do a lot on Poppy Days, and we will do a lot. There'll be a big story next year on the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings, and the news crews will be all over that for the 80th, because we're getting preciously short of actually veterans that actually fought in those wars, and that generates awareness. But I also think that in this country, as opposed to in Europe. Now, when we were in Europe, the actual Europeans, the Dutch and the French, certainly in their schools, they are massive on looking after the veterans. Because they were occupied for 5 years under the Nazis, whereas in this country we weren't occupied. We went into Europe as and we freed them from it, and they're grateful for that. But we were never occupied, and it didn't sit in the psyche of the British public as much as it does in the side of the Europeans.
I think the education's a good point. I think we do talk.
It's visual, isn't it? It's us. us.
We
as well,
teach
in
them about
media
the
as
rise
well.
of Hitler.
Yeah.
But I don't think we really teach them about the massive sacrifices of World War I and World War II.
no.
And not just by us, by
The
all
whole of
those
the Commonwealth
countries.
and the Allies as well, yeah.
You know,
I mean, that's
40% of all our contribution were from Commonwealth countries, and they were all volunteers. None of them were conscripted from those countries.
It's actually, the statistics, when you look at it, is actually quite frightening when you see the scale of it. I mean, we're in uproar now. If we get one explosion go off somewhere and 6 or 7 people killed, you get 1,000 bomber raids they were doing over London, and it don't bear thinking about, does it?
And vice versa.
And vice versa, of course. You know what I mean?
Repeatedly vice versa.
So the horrors of it.
So education and perhaps
dedication as well,
Mickey. Perhaps we're not valuing freedom because we take it for granted.
I think when we do that, I think we're in fear of losing it as well. I think if you're in danger of losing it then. I think I wouldn't want to do it now. It's a bit like the cashless society. People are making decisions for us without our consent.
Yeah.
But it's same we have it all the time everywhere we go at the moment. Society seems to be saying more and more what we can and can't say.
Oh, I know
where
that.
we can and can't go. I don't want to get into a political argument, but who elected these people to do that? I didn't see it on any platform.
All I can say, Mickey, is to you and others that do what you do for the Royal British Legion, and especially what you've done for that diminishing number of Normandy veterans. And I've been at Normandy anniversaries. I've seen the black cabs over there. Well done, you, for what you do. And I will see you in Normandy on June the 6th next year.
Next year, I'll be there.
Because I'll be there as well.
Do you want to come in a taxi, sir?
I may well. And thanks for
You're more than welcome.
Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, there we are. Education is the key, I think, to much of this. Now, in a moment, this is really quite extraordinary. In a moment, we're going to talk about what is happening in South Africa, where a new political party is following the Brexit party. But before we get there, we now can show you what happened in Northern Ireland earlier on today. The poppy seller's name was Roberta McNally. So let's have a look.
One of them come over and started to give us a bit of abuse about some of the stuff that was on the table, REC and UDR stuff. And then he went away, and then another one came over and he started to give a bit of verbal abuse as well. So, and then later on that afternoon, the woman in question who's on the video, which has been shared all over social media, she came in and just went nuts with verbal abuse, shouting all over the shop, and then calling for security whenever she had finished. Now, I don't know what she thought security was going to do, but she called for the security. But she gave us called us UDR murderers and RUC murderers. In a roundabout way, good for the poppy appeal, because we have sat there and I'm near out of stock because people are coming from Belfast, Newtownards, Lisburn, Portadown. They're coming from all over the province to support Lurgan Poppy Appeal. And we collected, on yesterday, we collected twice as much as what we would have on a normal day.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
South Africa, a beautiful place, but a failing state in all regards. Regular major power outages, law and order totally out of control, particularly in cities like Johannesburg. And in the Western Cape, some people have simply had enough. And a new political party was launched this week based on what the Brexit Party did. And I'm very pleased to say I'm joined by Phil Craig, leader of the Referendum Party in South Africa, and more specifically in the Western Cape. Well, Phil, I'm very flattered to think that our efforts to break away from the European Union have inspired a political movement. In a sentence or two, tell us what it's all about.
Yeah, look, we're absolutely delighted that you've led the way and given us the roadmap to how to deliver genuine democracy to people in the Western Cape. And effectively, look, South Africa has an ideological divide. One half of the country effectively is fairly left-leaning, African nationalist, and economically pursues fairly disastrous policies. And at the other end of the country, we've got a government that is relatively Western-leaning, can I say, capitalistic, social capitalistic, and habitually votes against the national government. For 30 years, it never has voted for the government that we've got. And effectively, those people have just had enough. As you say, South Africa's a failing state, and it's a failing state that we didn't vote in and we can't vote out. And we want control of our own destiny.
Now, of course, it'll be said to you, Phil, as it was said to me, this is impossible, it can't happen, people would never support it. Do you have any evidence that people living in the Cape actually want a referendum?
Absolutely. So, look, I think what's that Gandhi saying? Is it first they laugh at you, then they ignore you. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. We've polled regularly over the last 3.5 years, and the last poll we ran was in August this year. 68% of people in the Western Cape want a referendum, and 58% want Western Cape independence. So we are very, very confident that if we can get the referendum, we're going to win it.
But you'll be up against the status quo. You'll be up against the establishment. You'll be up against probably the big corporates, not necessarily the entrepreneurs, but the big corporates. You'll be up against constitutional challenges. Have you got the heft? Have you got the experience? Have you got the team of people that can genuinely fight this? Having public sympathy is one thing, but actually battling against the establishment is really tough.
It absolutely is tough, but that's where the fun is, isn't it? At the end of the day, one of the great things I think with your movement too, and with ours, is it's an inspiring movement of people that come together from the ground. And actually, what we've achieved so far already is just nothing short of remarkable. And I love Winston Churchill quotes, and my favourite one is, "History shall be kind to me, for I intend to write it." And that's our attitude here. So we intend to prevail. Yes, I think we can do it. Not going to be easy, but we are going to win. And look, we're a long way down the road. We've already made mayhem politically here, and we're only just getting started. So, yeah, I believe we're going to do this. Absolutely.
Well, I have to say, absolute pleasure to talk to you. I'm going to watch this with very great interest because I think if you succeeded, you might find a lot of us might want to come and live there. So I wish you well in your endeavours, and thank you very much indeed for joining me this evening. Now, we're going to stick with the English-speaking world, our real friends around the world. We're heading off to Australia. I'm going to talk to Keith Pitt, Member of Parliament for the Liberal National Party of Queensland, representing Hinkler. And this is an astonishing story. Keith joins me down the line at some ungodly hour. Keith, as I understand it, a great big wind farm, onshore wind farm, is going to be built in Queensland that will directly threaten the endangered koala bear. Tell me, this surely cannot be true.
Well, it's good morning from me and good evening to you and your viewers. Of course, in wonderful Australia, it's the best part of the day, actually. But you're spot on. So this is 1,350 hectares of actual koala habitat, which is being cleared for a 450 megawatt wind farm. So that's 100 towers, and it's one of many in Australia, to be honest, that are either underway or proposed or planned. But where are the activists? Where are the Greens? Where are the people who tie themselves to our railway lines to stop Australia's coal from getting to ports and power in the world and lock themselves to equipment in the gates? And one of the control measures here, Nigel, I know you'll love this, is if they happen to injure an animal, well, the best way to deal with it is a blunt blow to the back of the skull with a hammer or a crowbar.
Oh,
so
lovely.
this is really starting to get, well, it's really starting to get a go on here. And I just can't believe the hypocrisy. If this was in the leafy suburbs of Sydney or Brisbane, we'd have 300, 400, 500 activists down there chaining themselves to trees to prevent this. But because it's regional Queensland, about 150 kilometres to the northwest of what's known as the beef capital here, Rockhampton, nowhere to be seen.
No, and tell me, I mean, how much trouble is the koala in?
Well, it is listed. And as I said, if this was something in a regional suburb where we do have koala populations, there would be absolute turmoil, outrage. It would be all over the national press. There would be people literally strapping themselves to everything to prevent it. But because it's regional Queensland and it's for a wind turbine and not something else, well, apparently that's okay. So I don't understand this. They did a survey. They found 17 koalas just in the survey.
And tell me, what chance do you have of stopping it?
Well, it's actually underway right now. So there are some towers that are already under construction. And from memory, there's 800 tonne of concrete in the base alone. And these enormous towers have to get up through some very rough and rugged bushland, which means you've got to clear enormous pathways and roads. That's what a lot of the work is about. It's a long way from anywhere, to be honest.
Yeah.
And just because it's a wind turbine, apparently that's okay. And you can just bypass all of the environmental regulations in Australia.
The hypocrisy of the Green Movement, fully exposed by Keith Pitt. Thank you for joining us early in the morning from Queensland. Thank you very much indeed. Now, something interesting here, and you may say I'm being a bit selfish about this, but YouGov did a bit of polling this week. Big sample, 4,000 people, and they asked people, would Nigel Farage make a good leader of the Conservative Party? And amongst Conservative voters, have a look at these numbers. 18% said very good leader, 23% said fairly good leader, with only 27 against. So that shows, actually, within the Conservative Party, they are now becoming so desperate, they even think that maybe I could be the man to save them. Well, we're some way from that, but it is interesting. Now, you may not have heard of the black poppy, or more accurately, the black rose poppy. But have a look at these pictures, and we'll show you what it is. So there it is. There's the black poppy with its little emblem below. And what's it all about? Well, on the face of it, it's to honour black servicemen that were killed serving in the wars, who some people believe are underrepresented. And you're seeing a picture here of Selina Carty, who founded this movement back in 2010. But it also represents black people who fought against the British in a variety of wars. And it also represents a demand for reparations. So it is intensely political, totally against the spirit of what Armistice Day, Poppy Day is all about. And yet, I'm very sad to say that on a visit yesterday to Surrey, our King, King Charles, wore one of these black poppies. There he is wearing a normal poppy, and there he is wearing the black poppy below. I doubt many of the other media organisations will even pay attention to it. Perhaps some won't even notice it. But if they do, then the King has made an absolutely terrible mistake. Or more likely, far more likely, he's been told, wear that, because that'll show, you know, that you're sympathetic to all of the ethnic minorities and their families in the past who fought in the wars. Whoever advised the King to wear that black poppy should be sacked from Buckingham Palace and out of their job by tomorrow morning. It is a terrible thing to get the monarch to do. The whole point of wearing the poppy, the whole point of the cenotaph is that it's not about class or race or rank or what medals you won. It treats everybody absolutely the same. And that's the way that it simply has to stay. In a moment, I'll be joined on Talking Pints by Craig Answorth. He is a former Royal Marine Commando who served with distinction in Afghanistan and then went on to become a bodyguard for the Beckhams and many other people. It's going to be an interesting talk, and I want to get his take on what's happening in London this weekend.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Put your mouth. Okay. Here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, a piece of breaking news about the banking sector, which I am especially pleased about. Sky News have broken the story that says that Dame Alison Rose will not, I repeat, not be getting the bulk of the supposed £11 million that she was going to walk away from NatWest Bank with. So I don't know how much money she's going to get, but she doesn't deserve to get 11 million quid. And as I told you 2 nights ago, we, the taxpayer, are still in hock to the tune of 33 billion quid to that failing bank. Now, enough of that. It's time for Talking Pints, and I'm joined by Craig Answorth. Craig, welcome to Talking Pints. Great to see you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Not at all. Former Royal Marine, elite bodyguard. But let's go back to the beginning. Really quite a checkered, from what I can see, start to your life. Sort of.
Absolutely.
Parents split up. You go to Australia. You're kind of stranded in Australia. But you're quite good at school, aren't you?
I've always enjoyed learning and bettering myself in every opportunity you can do, which is what drew me to the Royal Marines. And there's no better way to level up than actually joining something like the Royal Marines.
Yeah, because, you know, you were heading off to the Daily Mail. You were going to be a journalist. And so was there always this thought that maybe the military, maybe the Marines was where you might finish up?
Absolutely. And there was no reason for it either. I didn't have any family members, no friends. Nobody were actually serving in the military at the time. It was just something I felt a burning urge, just always drawn to it for a reason I can't explain.
And the Royal Marines? Why the Royal Marines?
If you're going to join, why not join with the best?
I mean, I should imagine, you know, you join up and you've heard all these stories about just how tough it is to pass.
And every one of them are true, I can assure you that.
They put you through hell.
Well, 32 weeks, it's the longest training, basic training. They call it basic training, but basic training on Earth. And you actually live every single day of that, you know. So it's amazing. The learning curve is steep throughout, but it's fantastic. It changed me in a positive way as an individual, as a person. And
what made you think you could do it?
I wanted to see if I could. I wanted to see if I could achieve something like that. I had a bit of audacity to actually believe I could achieve something like that. But it was kind of, I saw it as almost a get-out-of-jail card. I didn't see my life going anywhere, and I thought if I can become a Royal Marine and be one of those guys, then I'll be the best version of myself. And that's what I set out to achieve.
32 weeks.
I tell you, it's the longest 32 weeks of my life.
Oh, well, before you know it, you're not just in the Royal Marines, but you're in a war.
Absolutely.
And a war in Afghanistan that was, at times, very bloody.
It was, certainly.
Battalions, at times, you know, taking casualties, amazing medical backup, a lot of blokes being saved who would have died in Normandy.
Absolutely.
And places like that. But still, in terms of injury, wounding, quite significant percentages of people being wounded and killed.
Absolutely, it's devastating. Even just not the guys who are killed, but the guys who are injured, who still suffer now with even from the most minor injuries, with small back injuries or foot injuries, not to mention losing limbs.
Yeah.
So there's lots of guys out there and girls out there suffering even to this day.
Oh no! And you were there involved in firefights.
Yeah, absolutely.
Genuine battles. What happens to the mind when suddenly you're in a real combat, life and death situation?
Do you know, when you're building up and you have your you have information that it might kick off at any time. Obviously, you ramp up and you start to get nervous, as human beings do.
The adrenaline must go through the roof.
Through the roof, you can feel you become so primal. But as soon as it kicked off, I just found all of my training kicked in, and everyone around you is exactly the same. You bond together with that band of brothers, and it's essentially you against the world at that very point. So,
well, you're one of those that's done it. You did your time. You served through the war. It's Armistice Day on Saturday. It's our national act of remembrance on Sunday. What does it mean to you?
It's about absent friends. It's about the sacrifice, not just of my friends, but the people that came before us. Second World War, it doesn't matter. But the freedoms that we experience today, I feel we've almost become a very sports society where we forget why we have such freedoms and what we have. It's so easy to look over those because of the way society's set up these days. But for me, it's about taking that time to sit back and appreciate the sacrifices of all those that went before me.
It was interesting, we had Mickey the cabbie in earlier saying, that some young people have kind of forgotten what it's all, or have never known what it's all about. We have poppy sellers being intimidated, surrounded by mobs at stations. It's not good, is it?
It's not good, and You know, it's obviously a harsh sense of delusion where the freedoms we have here, 4 freedoms of speech and things that have been earned by the guys that are represented by the poppies in which we wear. It's a sad state of affairs. And I don't understand it, if I'm honest with you.
No, well, I'm afraid a lot of us don't understand what's going on at the moment. But no, it's an important time. So, Craig, you know, you do your time in the military and you go down this well-trodden route, which is former soldiers, former Marines, go into close protection. It's become the kind of almost a standard thing for people to do. What fascinates me about your story is that you decide to go into close protection, and kind of before you can say Jack Robinson, you are doing close protection not just for wealthy businessmen or politicians or whatever else it may be, but you suddenly get yourself into sort of the big celeb world.
Yes.
How does that happen?
A little bit of luck, like every gift in this. But I was very obsessive before I left the Royal Marines and put a lot of due diligence into the companies and things I worked for. And like when I joined the Royal Marines and aimed for the best I could find there, I did the same in security. And I was very fortunate to procure that position. And I very quickly found myself surrounded by people like your Chris Hemsworths, your Tom Hollands. And once your face has been recognised around London, and then I started my own company, people recognise you as that level of security, so that's what you attract. And I found it snowballing, and I was very, very fortunate at the very beginning of my career, for sure.
Yeah, and lots of other very big names that we're not allowed to talk about for reasons of security, and that's completely.
Thank you for that.
No. Well, I mean, I of course, Craig, have had to have close protection through many years with threats and goodness knows what. And I guess in a sense, you know more about these people than their own families, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. It's a very strange thing to even try and to explain to anybody, but you're essentially a fly on the wall for every aspect of a family's life or an individual's life.
You know it all.
Absolutely, walking people from their hotel room or sometimes even their bedroom door. Yeah. And you're with them all day through every aspect, sometimes even entering the bathroom with them. Yeah. So you're with them and you understand every aspect. You have to be everywhere.
I know, it is incredibly close. And then, of course, COVID hits. So there's nothing to do.
Yes.
So here you are, Craig Answorth, action man, Royal Marine, war veteran, elite bodyguard. You're stuck at home.
Yep, and many people always ask me, how did I become a Royal Marine? How did I do those jobs? But for me, I enjoyed that. That was great. I felt like I was built for it. But when I was made to sit at home and just stew with all of the situations I've been through, as we've mentioned previously, some absent friends, and things began to build. And then, unfortunately, with that suffering, I began to lose friends as well, and actually lost 11 friends in 18 months to suicide.
Just unbelievable. And all people with similar backgrounds to you?
All similar backgrounds. Yeah. 7 actually ex-military. The rest, some from America, some from South Africa, some from Australia. So this was a global thing.
Terrible number.
And after that, I fell into a similar situation. I became very suicidal and began to spiral. And it wasn't, if it wasn't for my camaraderie of my Royal Marine brothers that stepped in to support me and essentially is why I'm sat here today.
The cost of lockdown.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you've written a book about all of this.
I have indeed.
You've done it. It's got an amazing title, The Discombobulated Alpha. And there's a picture. So this is a true story. This is the story of your life, but it's kind of almost in novel form, isn't it?
Absolutely. What I wanted to do is I wanted to show people that no matter from my Royal Marine, bodyguard, or any of the aspects I've had, that people still suffer with mental health, and that's why people should speak about it, especially us men. Women are great at speaking with each other or expressing their feelings. Us guys, we don't do so as much. And what I'm trying to do is inspire people to actually share their feelings, not just, complain and moan, but actually have genuine conversations about how they feel and make it okay for men to speak about their mental health issues. I've recently moved into coaching and working with workshops, and it's amazed me at how many guys have never had those conversations. And those conversations are the backbone to being in the Royal Marines. You triage each other, you take care of each other, you notice that people aren't doing so well. And that's what we need to bring into the civilian world.
So in a funny sort of way, you kept all this, whatever problems you had there, from the past, the war, etc., you kept it all bottled up. The bad parts of being stuck at home, but it's made you reevaluate your life, and And I have to say, well, I think, Craig, you are a very, very good role model to many people. You've achieved a lot in life, and I'm going to have a look at this book, and who knows, by the end of it, I might need to speak to somebody. Listen, thanks ever so much for joining me on Talking Pints.
Lovely. Thank you for having me.
Great to have
Cheers,
you.
Nigel.
Well, over and out from me this evening. Let's have a look at what the weather has got in store for us.
Good evening. A bit of a chilly start tomorrow, but for most it'll be a fine bright day with sunny spells. Some heavy showers, particularly in the south early on. We've still got low pressure dominating the scene, so it is still spinning up plenty of showers, and particularly tonight as the isobars squeeze together across South Wales and southwest England. It's going to get very windy, so further heavy showers to come in here. The showers elsewhere tending to ease off. Some lively ones around right now, but turning fairly dry through the night for much of the Midlands, eastern England, northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Where we've got the clear skies and light winds, there will be a frost across parts of Scotland further south, mostly holding up at 5 or 6. But quite a wet start to the morning for South Wales and southwest England. Some heavy showers moving through here. They will move through and then get into the southeast for a time before tending to disappear before lunchtime. Showers through the day across northern Scotland and some for Northern Ireland, and later on we'll see a few developing over northwest England and North Wales. But for a good chunk of the country, it's a dry and bright day tomorrow. Good spells of sunshine. On the cool side, temperatures mostly in single figures, maybe 11 or 12 in the south. Certainly a cold start to the weekend, a more extensive frost across northern Britain and a few fog patches as well. But once they've gone, most of us having a fine day on Saturday. Still a few showers in northern Scotland with a bit of a breeze and some rain down to the southwest late on. That'll spread in during Sunday, and again on Sunday some frost and fog early on.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me.